They stand like forgotten monuments. America's $50 million mansions that shimmer with luxury from a distance, yet remain completely abandoned up close. Marble staircases polished smooth by feet that no longer climb them, chandeliers worth more than an average house still hanging, dim and trembling in the slightest breeze. Locals whisper that it isn't the price tag that keeps people away, it's the history sealed inside the walls. Mysterious vanishings, families ruined overnight, rooms that stay unnaturally cold even in summer. Tonight we step inside these silent palaces and reveal why no one, not even billionaires, dares to call them home. The rise and disappearance of the original owners of these abandoned $50 million mansions has become one of America's strangest, darkest patterns, almost as if extraordinary wealth invites extraordinary ruin. In each case, the story begins the same way. A powerful family builds a mansion so large, so excessive, so aggressively permanent, that it seems designed to outlive them. These estates weren't just homes, they were declarations of dominance. The Hawthornes, the Beaumonts, the early railroad families, the silent film elites of Hollywood, each poured unimaginable fortunes into estates meant to anchor their legacy for generations. And yet, the moment the mansion is completed, the cracks begin to show, not in the walls but in the families themselves. The Hawthorne story is often cited as the most unsettling example. Elias Hawthorne was a man whose wealth was built on shipping routes, forced labor, and deals conducted in candlelit offices far from the public eye. He commissioned a staggering 42-room Italianate mansion on a hill overlooking his workers' housing, a daily reminder of who held the power. He designed the ballroom after Versailles, ordered stained glass from Paris, and imported marble from a quarry he bought outright just to skip the waiting list. But as the mansion neared completion in 1911, Elias's behavior reportedly shifted. Workers later described him pacing the grounds at night, muttering to himself, terrified that someone or something was watching him. Some claimed he would freeze mid-conversation, eyes drifting to corners of rooms that no one else found remarkable. At one point he fired half his staff in a single day and demanded they tell him what they were planning. No one ever understood what he meant. Just weeks after moving into the estate, the entire Hawthorne family vanished. Dinner plates still warm, a fire still burning in the drawing room. A maid's apron dropped halfway down a staircase. It was as if the home swallowed them whole. Police found no signs of a struggle, only a series of muddy footprints leading from the back door into the forest, stopping abruptly at a small clearing. That clearing, decades later, was discovered to sit directly above a hidden chamber deep beneath the estate. The chamber, carved into the earth like a tomb, held ledgers of secret transactions, lists of enemies, and evidence of violent dealings that Elias had kept under meticulous lock and key. The disappearance was never solved. The family was never found. The mansion has stood empty since 1911. Then there were the Beaumonts of Palm Beach, a dynasty built on oil land and political favors. Clarence Beaumont was known for his extravagant parties, guests arriving by yacht, tables filled with gold-trimmed china and champagne fountains. But behind closed doors, he was reportedly consumed by paranoia. Letters discovered long after his death reveal that he believed someone was sabotaging him from within his own household. He installed locks on interior doors, dismissed longtime servants, and slept with a revolver beneath his pillow. His mansion, a Mediterranean palace with manicured gardens, became more fortress than home. One humid July morning, Beaumont was found dead in his conservatory. The door was locked from the inside. No sign of forced entry. Local police ruled it a heart attack, but the scene told a different story. His face contorted in a grotesque expression of terror, shattered glass surrounding him as if something had burst inward. 3 attempts to renovate the mansion after his death ended in utter catastrophe. One developer bankrupted, one hospitalized with a sudden illness, one killed in a construction accident after claiming he heard footsteps following him room to room. And then on the opposite coast, a young tech billionaire, obsessed with surveillance, secrecy, and control, constructed the Mulholland Glass Mansion, a house of mirrors high above Los Angeles. He disappeared without warning. No forced entry, no ransom, no trace. The mansion was filled with unfinished corridors, coded locks, secret rooms whose purpose no one understood. He seemed convinced someone was trying to break in, but investigators eventually concluded he was trying to keep something inside. Each of these stories began with unstoppable wealth and a family convinced their names would echo for centuries. Yet the same pattern repeats. As the mansion rises, the family collapses, paranoia grows, secrets tighten, and then suddenly the story ends, not with a legacy but with an empty palace waiting for its next victim. Unexplained deaths connected to these enormous estates are often dismissed as urban legends, embellished by decades of rumor and fear. But when you begin examining the patterns, names, dates, autopsy discrepancies, abandoned investigations, the stories begin aligning with unnerving precision. Every one of these mansions carries at least one death that simply does not make sense on paper, a fatal event that should have been resolved easily, yet instead dissolved into silence, conflicting testimonies, and official reports that seem deliberately incomplete. Wealthy families often try to bury scandal, but here, the scandals feel buried with the people who never made it out. Consider the Hawthorne estate, where the disappearance of Elias Hawthorne and his family was only the beginning. In 1924, more than a decade after the mansion had been sealed, a pair of surveyors were sent to inspect the property boundary lines. One returned home shaken and disoriented. The other never returned at all. The missing man's compass was found near the estate's root cellar, pointing in every direction at once, the needle spinning uncontrollably as if the magnetic field around the mansion had warped. His partner later told investigators that they heard knocking from inside the boarded-up mansion, slow and rhythmic, as if someone were trapped and signaling. When authorities finally managed to force their way inside, they found no intruder, only 3 sets of perfectly preserved boot prints in a dust-covered hallway that had been sealed for over 10 years. The investigation was quietly closed within weeks, and the surviving surveyor left the state permanently. Then there is the Rosemont Villa death of Clarence Beaumont, officially listed as a heart attack but troublingly inconsistent with medical evidence. His nails were cracked as if he had clawed at something. The shattered conservatory glass suggested an impact from inside, not outside. And though the room was locked from within, early responders reported a strong floral scent lingering in the air, like night-blooming jasmine, which should not have been possible, since those vines had withered years earlier. Even stranger, the coroner assigned to Beaumont's autopsy died just 6 months later under circumstances that mirrored Beaumont's own. Alone in a locked room, eyes frozen wide, body found in a posture of violent fright. No explanation was offered to the public. His family sealed the autopsy results, and the county filed Beaumont's death as natural causes, despite the fact that experienced detectives openly disagreed. The Glass Mansion in Los Angeles carries its own dark record. Before the billionaire vanished, a private security guard was found dead at the foot of one of the mansion's endless reflective hallways. He had stumbled into frame on one of the home's security cameras, visibly terrified, looking over his shoulder as if someone or something was following him through the mirrored labyrinth. In the footage, he appears to be fleeing from an unseen pursuer, hands trembling, breath ragged. Moments later, he collapses without ever being touched. The autopsy listed cardiac arrest triggered by extreme fear, yet the man had no history of heart issues. His family insisted he was calm, healthy, and deeply committed to his job. The billionaire fired the entire security team days later and replaced them with an AI surveillance system, claiming he no longer trusted human reaction time. Less than a year later, he himself disappeared. Smaller incidents surround these mansions as well. Groundskeepers found dead near locked garden gates. Housekeepers collapsed at the foot of staircases with no witnesses. Contractors suffering sudden strokes or falls in rooms that had no structural issues. Every death was explained away with tidy language: accidental falls, stress-related event, equipment malfunction. yet each occurred in a space that had already developed a reputation for dread. What makes these deaths even more disturbing is that they do not cluster in a single era. Instead, they ripple outward across decades, affecting anyone who spends too much time inside the estates or attempts to restore them. Wealthy buyers, curious historians, real estate developers, and ordinary employees all seem equally vulnerable. The tragedy does not discriminate, it simply waits. No matter how meticulously the families tried to control the narrative, the truth seeped through the cracks. These mansions carry a death toll that defies coincidence, a series of endings that challenge logic, law, and human explanation. The discovery of secret rooms behind false walls is one of the most disturbing common threads linking these cursed multi-million-dollar estates. At first glance, these mansions look like architectural marvels: grand foyers, sweeping staircases, galleries lined with priceless artifacts. But step beyond the public facade, and you uncover a darker truth. Nearly every one of these properties contains hidden spaces that were never included in official blueprints. Some are small, claustrophobic chambers sealed with rotting wood. Others are elaborate underground corridors built with suspicious precision. And what lies inside these spaces reveals far more about the owners than any portrait hanging in their gilded halls. The Hawthorne Estate's secret room was discovered purely by accident. Decades after the family vanished, a structural engineer hired to evaluate the mansion's decaying support beams noticed a strange echo when tapping along the library's east wall. The sound was hollow, inconsistent with a solid stone foundation. When the wall was finally pried open, a narrow stone staircase was revealed, far older than the mansion itself, descending into a cold chamber carved directly into the earth. What investigators found there was nothing short of chilling: ledgers documenting illicit transactions, coded letters referring to unnamed clients, and a rusted metal cage that looked like it had been welded inside the room rather than lowered in. Even more disturbing was the fact that the chamber had no ventilation, no secondary exit, and no explanation for its existence. It was clear the family had secrets, but the sheer scale of what they tried to hide suggested those secrets carried a heavy price. In the Rosemont Villa, the secret spaces were more subtle. A contractor hired in the 1970s to repair water damage noticed that one guest bedroom wall measured 3 feet thicker on the blueprints than it appeared in person. That discrepancy led to the discovery of a sliding panel tucked behind vintage wallpaper. Beyond it lay a narrow passageway leading into an elongated crawl space filled with old boxes and yellowing papers. The most unsettling find was a stack of unsent letters written by Clarence Beaumont himself, addressed to a woman whose name does not appear in any of the Beaumont family archives. In those letters, Clarence described hearing voices whispering behind the walls, voices he claimed belonged not to ghosts but to someone who never left. More ominously, he wrote that he feared the hidden spaces were being used behind his back, that doors opened on their own, and that he often smelled perfume, the same jasmine scent noted at his death scene. But nothing compares to the labyrinth of hidden architecture inside the Mulholland Glass mansion. On the surface, the home was stark and modern, all reflective surfaces and transparent rooms. Yet behind that minimalist design was a tangle of narrow, windowless hallways known only to the owner and the architect he paid under strict confidentiality. After his disappearance, investigators found multiple hidden chambers, soundproof, lined with steel, accessible only through touch-activated panels disguised within mirrored walls. One room contained nothing but a single chair bolted to the floor, illuminated by a harsh overhead light. Another held a cluster of servers running encrypted software that no agency has ever successfully decoded. The most unnerving space was a small hexagonal chamber painted entirely black, with no furniture or no wiring, no visible purpose. The air inside was stale, and investigators noted that the temperature in that room was inexplicably lower than the rest of the house. These hidden spaces weren't simple panic rooms or eccentric luxuries. They served specific obsessive purposes, whether for concealing wrongdoing, conducting secret operations, or attempting to control whatever terrified the owners in their final days. The more investigators dug, the more they realized these secret rooms often predated the worst events at each mansion. They were built out of fear, not convenience. The walls were meant to hide something, or keep something contained. And it wasn't just the primary owners who seemed aware of these spaces. Workers reported hearing tapping behind walls, muffled conversations, or the unmistakable sound of footsteps in areas that should not have existed. Several contractors refused to return after discovering bricked-off corridors or locked panels that no key on the property could open. One electrician at the Rosemont Villa quit on the spot after finding a narrow passage that ended abruptly in a dead-end wall where someone had etched deep scratch marks, like fingernails dragged in a final effort to escape. In every one of these mansions, the secret rooms served as silent witnesses to something far darker than wealth or vanity. They held the stories no one wanted told, the evidence of the fears, obsessions, and crimes that led to the downfall of families who believed they could build monuments to their own invincibility. The mansions may stand empty now, but behind their false walls the past remains sealed in shadows, waiting for anyone brave or foolish enough to look inside. Evidence of illegal operations hidden within these abandoned luxury estates is rarely discussed publicly, yet investigators, historians, and even former staff members have quietly acknowledged that these palatial homes were often built not just to showcase wealth, but to conceal the darker engines that created it. Many of these multi-million-dollar properties functioned as gilded fronts for criminal networks, financial manipulation, smuggling routes, covert meetings, and covert experiments that no legitimate business could ever risk exposing. The mansions were designed with beauty above ground and corruption below it, their elegant architecture masking an entirely different world running beneath polished marble and chandelier light. The Hawthorne estate provides one of the most documented, though still officially buried, examples. Inside the hidden chamber beneath the library, investigators found ledgers containing coded entries describing shipments that never appeared in public manifests. The names listed were powerful, recognizably tied to early 20th century business empires and political dynasties. Elias Hawthorne's shipping routes weren't just for luxury goods, they were used to transport forced laborers, illegal materials, and stolen artifacts from war-torn regions. Some historians believe the underground chamber served as a private interrogation or torture room for rivals who threatened to expose his dealings. The metal cage welded into the corner suggests something far more sinister than financial fraud, a place where someone was meant to be held, controlled, or punished. Notes found scattered on a stone table referenced loose ends and unfinished debts, implying Hawthorne wasn't working alone. The mansion was a hub. The disappearance of the family may have been less a mysterious vanishing and more the final step in tying off the very loose ends Hawthorne wrote about. Meanwhile, the Rosemont Villa's illegal operations were wrapped in the luxury and anonymity of Palm Beach high society. Clarence Beaumont, beyond his public image as an oil magnate, quietly hosted clandestine meetings with foreign investors, politicians, and black market brokers. The hidden passages within the villa weren't simply architectural quirks, they were escape routes and private corridors used to move sensitive documents undetected. Among the papers discovered in the secret crawl space were faint blueprints for offshore rigs that violated international boundaries, letters discussing covert bribes, and correspondences referencing the exchange happening below the conservatory. This mysterious phrase has never been fully decoded, but some believe it referred to an underground room beneath the glass house, still sealed to this day, where illegal deals were conducted away from the eyes and ears of the estate's staff. After Beaumont's death, 2 of his business partners fled the country. Another was found drowned near his yacht. The pattern suggested the villa was less a home and more a headquarters for operations that many had a stake in keeping buried. On the West Coast, the Mulholland Glass Mansion's involvement in illegal activity is the most technologically advanced and possibly the most disturbing. The billionaire who built it was deeply invested in data mining, surveillance, and experimental tech that skirted federal regulations. The hidden rooms filled with encrypted servers were believed to house illegally obtained data, financial records, private communications, even classified materials siphoned from compromised networks. The house itself functioned as a surveillance machine, Investigators found that several mirrors were actually one-way observation panels, and the mansion's AI-driven security system contained code far more advanced than anything his companies were publicly developing. Some specialists who examined the system believe the owner was running psychological experiments inside the mansion, on guests, employees, maybe even himself. One corridor contained sensors that tracked movement patterns in real time. Another monitored changes in heart rate and stress levels. Whether this was research, obsession, or something darker remains unknown, but the billionaire's disappearance halted every inquiry. In other estates across the country, Newport mansions, southern plantations bought by northern industrialists, desert compounds owned by silent investors, similar evidence has surfaced. Hidden vaults filled with forged documents, underground tunnels used for bootlegging during Prohibition, secret libraries containing banned books and confidential intelligence files, rooms filled with cash that had begun to rot from decades of humidity. Every mansion seemed to be part sanctuary, part fortress, part crime scene, built to elevate the owner's status while burying their secrets deep enough that no outsider would dare dig. The legality of what took place inside these mansions is impossible to separate from the tragedies that followed. Each owner believed they were untouchable, protected by wealth, influence, and walls thicker than most bank vaults. But as history shows, their crimes may have been the very thing that invited the downfall of their families, the haunting of their homes, and the abandonment of mansions once meant to stand as eternal monuments to power. Stories of paranormal activity inside these abandoned luxury mansions have circulated for decades, whispered by groundskeepers, late-night security staff, contractors, and even real estate agents who refuse to step inside after sunset. While skeptics often dismiss these accounts as exaggerations, the consistency across time, geography, and owners is unsettling. No matter the mansion, East Coast, West Coast, or deep in old southern estates, people describe the same sensations: the temperature dropping the moment they cross the threshold, the feeling of being watched from the upper floors, the sound of footsteps pacing in locked rooms, and disembodied voices calling out from places no living person occupies. These claims often come from individuals with no connection to each other, yet their stories align almost perfectly. At the Hawthorne estate, paranormal reports began long before the disappearances occurred. Servants working in the mansion in the early 1900s wrote letters to family, describing faint whispers drifting through vents, even when the air was still. A young maid swore she saw a shadow pacing outside her room late one night, only to find the hallway empty when she opened the door. After the family vanished, those eerie whispers seemed to grow louder. In the 1930s, a caretaker hired to maintain the grounds claimed he heard children laughing in the abandoned nursery, the sound echoing down the hallway despite the entire wing being sealed. He quit after a single month, refusing to step foot inside again. Decades later, a paranormal investigation team spent a night in the mansion and recorded what they described as intelligent responses: footsteps answering their own footsteps, knocks repeating in rhythmic patterns, and distant breathing captured on audio devices. One investigator left mid-session after feeling a cold hand grip her shoulder in an empty room. The Rosemont Villa has its own dark history of unexplained activity. Groundskeepers often noted that the jasmine vines surrounding the conservatory emitted a strong scent at night, even though the plants were dead. Workers repairing the tile roof reported hearing a woman singing somewhere inside the mansion, a melodic but faint voice drifting upward. When they climbed down to investigate, the house was silent, yet the scent of jasmine hung heavily in the air. During a brief attempt to renovate the villa in the 1980s, electricians reported lights flickering in perfect rhythmic pulses, almost like Morse code, even after the power was shut off. One electrician claimed he saw a woman in a 1920s dress staring at him from the ballroom doorway. She disappeared when he blinked. He refused to return, stating simply, "There's someone living in that house, and they're not alive." Local police responded to multiple trespassing calls over the years, triggered by motion sensors inside the mansion. Each time the house was empty, yet officers consistently noted cold pockets of air and faint, repetitive knocking behind the walls. The Mulholland Glass Mansion, with its minimalist design and mirrored corridors, produced some of the most disturbing paranormal accounts. Security guards hired before the owner's disappearance frequently reported alarms that triggered in empty rooms, usually in the sealed wings of the house that the billionaire had explicitly warned them not to enter. One guard described seeing a silhouette reflected in a mirror behind him, tall, motionless, and standing far too close. When he turned around, no one was there. Another guard resigned after hearing frantic tapping coming from inside the mirrored walls, like someone trapped between the glass panels trying to get out. After the disappearance, investigators conducting a structural sweep claimed to hear footsteps pacing above them, but the mansion had no attic, and thermal cameras showed no heat signatures. Even hardened detectives admitted the house felt alive, reacting to their presence with subtle sounds and temperature shifts. Beyond the major estates, lesser-known mansions scattered across the country have similar tales: chandeliers swaying with no wind, portraits turning slightly overnight, locked doors found wide open in the morning, and entire rooms that seem to hold their breath when someone enters. Contractors hired to restore these properties often report sudden nausea, migraines, or overwhelming dread, symptoms that end the moment they step outside. Some describe hearing their names whispered from dark hallways. Others recall tools disappearing and reappearing in places they never walked. While some attribute these encounters to structural oddities, old pipes settling wood, faulty wiring, the experiences are too frequent and too similar to dismiss entirely. Those who work closest to the estates insist the houses have absorbed centuries of trauma, greed, secrecy, and violence, leaving an imprint strong enough to echo long after the owners are gone. They speak of these mansions not as empty structures, but as entities with memories, moods, and a presence that lingers in every silent corridor. Attempts to renovate these abandoned mansions almost always end in disaster, financial, physical, or psychological. Developers approach these estates with optimism, believing they can overwrite the past with modern luxury, new architecture, and fresh energy. Yet nearly every renovation effort collapses under circumstances that are too specific, too repeated, and too unnerving to ignore. It's not just that the buildings are old or cursed by bad luck. It's as if the houses themselves resist change, rejecting outsiders who try to force them into a new identity. Those who attempt restoration often walk away bankrupt, terrified, or permanently altered by what they encounter inside. The Hawthorne estate saw its first renovation attempt in the 1940s, when a wealthy investor planned to convert the mansion into a luxury lodge. Initially, progress was swift. Walls were reinforced, windows replaced, and the grounds cleared. But within weeks, workers began reporting bizarre incidents. Tools vanished and were later found arranged in perfect circles on the ballroom floor. Newly installed lights flickered in patterns resembling Morse code, though no electrician could explain the timing. A foreman claimed he heard footsteps pacing behind him in the sealed library chamber, followed by a low, guttural whisper he couldn't understand. When he turned, no one was there. The breaking point came when a worker fell from the grand staircase after insisting he'd been shoved by invisible hands. Construction halted, and the investor abandoned the project. He later confessed in a letter that he'd begun sleepwalking into the woods at night, always stopping in the same forest clearing where the Hawthorne family's muddy footprints were found decades earlier. The Rosemont Villa fared no better. In the 1970s, a Miami-based developer purchased the property with plans to transform it into an elite private club. His team, architects, contractors, and interior designers, spent months preparing the mansion for restoration. But from the beginning, the villa pushed back. The jasmine scent around the conservatory intensified to a suffocating sweetness each evening, making several workers physically ill. Electrical systems behaved erratically, with breakers tripping even when disconnected. During a routine inspection, an engineer discovered fresh condensation on the inside of windows in a sealed room, as if someone had been breathing heavily against the glass. One night, the project manager awoke to find muddy footprints leading from the hallway to the edge of his bed, prints that matched no shoe size on his crew. When he fled the property, he nearly crashed his car after seeing the silhouette of a woman standing in the driveway, her dress fluttering despite the still air. The Mulholland Glass Mansion's attempted renovation was the most catastrophic. After the billionaire owner vanished, a private firm was hired to assess the property's potential resale value. They lasted just over a month. Their report, which was later leaked, described unexplained electrical surges strong enough to fry industrial-grade equipment, hallways that seemed to distort in length, and mirrored walls that reflected things not present in the room. A structural specialist refused to re-enter after seeing his own reflection stare back at him with a delayed response. Another worker suffered a sudden seizure while inspecting the server chamber. During the episode, he repeatedly screamed, "It's watching me." After this incident, the crew evacuated immediately. Days later, infrared cameras set up outside the mansion recorded figures moving behind the glass walls, yet the building was locked and empty. The real estate company took a massive financial loss, declaring the mansion unmarketable and unsafe. Smaller restoration attempts across the country share similar fates. At a desert compound, an entire team quit after waking to find every door in the house wide open, though they had all been locked from the inside. At a Louisiana estate, workers heard knocking from inside walls they had already demolished. A Newport mansion renovation ended when a steel beam fell without cause, narrowly missing a contractor who swore he'd heard someone whisper, "Leave." Even when no physical harm occurs, those involved describe changes in their mood, personality, or sleep, nightmares of faceless figures standing beside their bed, sudden tempers, or a compelling urge to abandon the project without explanation. Some report depression or paranoia lasting months after leaving the site. These repeated failures have given rise to an unspoken rule among restoration experts: never underestimate the history embedded within a mansion's walls. Wealth, tragedy, crime, and grief can linger like a stain, resistant to demolition or design. These mansions were built with intentions, power, secrecy, control, and those intentions seem to persist long after their creators are gone, pushing back against anyone who tries to erase or reshape what they once were. The last mansion on our list has always felt like a story that refuses to end, a place where history curls in on itself like smoke that never clears. Locals call it the house that waits, not because anyone is expected to return, but because something inside seems unwilling to let the past settle. The estate sits on a cliff over Lake Ontario, its walls washed in the cold gray of northern storms. The structure is enormous. 5 floors, a ballroom, a boathouse, even a private observatory, but from the moment you see it you feel the overwhelming sensation that you're being watched from somewhere deep inside its windows. For decades, investigators, explorers, and even contractors have admitted the same thing: the house feels aware. Its final owners were the Hawthorns, an industrial dynasty who amassed their wealth long before the Gilded Age. By the 1920s they were reclusive, living almost entirely inside their lakeside palace. Letters from that era suggest that the patriarch, Elias Hawthorne, had begun suffering what doctors described as episodes of unreality. But the notes left behind by the family's servants tell a different story. They claimed Elias spent entire nights in the observatory, not studying the stars but staring at the black water below as if waiting for something to surface. They described him locking rooms without explanation, shifting furniture in the middle of the night, and insisting that no one, absolutely no one, enter the East Wing after dark. Those who disobeyed claimed they heard footsteps following them, though no one else was in the corridor. The official tragedy that ended the Hawthorne line is simple on paper. In 1937, the family vanished without a trace. Breakfast was set on the dining table. Elias's coat still hung by the door, and all the bedroom lamps were left burning. The authorities labeled it a mass drowning after discovering one overturned rowboat near the boathouse, but the details never matched the conclusion. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle, and according to the servants' remaining journals, the family had been avoiding the water entirely during their final months. Stories spread of strange lights moving below the surface at night, the same ones Elias had been watching. After the disappearance, the estate passed from hand to hand, every buyer eager at first and horrified within months. By the 1960s, Researchers were sent to catalog the property's belongings, but nearly all abandoned their assignment. They reported the same phenomenon, the sound of someone else breathing in empty rooms, doors opening as they walked past, and a sensation heavy and undeniable that they were being guided somewhere. Not violently, not aggressively, just guided, as though the house itself wanted to show them something they hadn't yet understood. One woman documented that she kept finding her steps unexplainably taking her toward the east wing, even while trying to leave. She quit the project the same day. Those who tried to repurpose the mansion fared no better. A luxury developer attempted to convert it into a lakeside resort, but the construction crew refused to finish the east wing renovation. Tools went missing, measurements changed overnight, and the workers reported shadows moving behind them in rooms without electricity. When the lead contractor fell from the third-floor balcony, claiming afterward that someone had pushed him, they shut the project down permanently. Insurance companies labeled the property a psychological hazard, citing consistent reports of paranoia, auditory disturbances, and environmental disorientation, a term created specifically for this case. The mansion's most recent caretaker, a historian hired to preserve the archives, lasted 3 months. His final report was never officially published, but leaked copies reveal a chilling pattern. Every diary, blueprint, and letter connected to the Hawthorns contains references to the East Wing. The servants mentioned hearing whispers near it. Elias noted shifts in the temperature and movement behind the walls. Even visiting relatives described the wing as wrong, though none could articulate why. The historian wrote that he began waking each night at the same time, 2:11 a.m., with the inexplicable urge to walk toward the wing, and each night, he swore he heard faint knocking coming from behind its sealed door. The house today remains untouched, fully furnished, its lights still functional when the generators are tested. The observatory lens is polished. The dining table remains set with porcelain. The east wing door is still locked from the inside. Not a single expert has dared to open it. The state refuses to auction the property. Private buyers withdraw their offers. Investigators last year, during an atmospheric scan, detected faint movement patterns inside the sealed wing, slow, rhythmic, almost like pacing. Whether it's a structural anomaly, an animal, or something that has been waiting there since the Hawthorns vanished, no one can say. But every person who has stepped through the mansion's threshold has admitted one undeniable truth. Whatever happened in that east wing didn't end. It's still happening. Before you step away from this story, pause for a moment and sit with the silence these abandoned mansions leave behind. Think about the rooms that were sealed in fear, the footsteps that never found an ending, the families who vanished without a trace. Places like these don't simply fade, they wait, holding memories that refuse to die. And if stories like this pull you in, if the unanswered questions keep echoing long after the screen goes dark, then you're exactly the kind of mind this channel was built for. So before you go, tell me this in the comments. What do you think truly happened inside those walls? Was it human, or was it something the family could never escape? Your theories might unlock the next chapter. And if you want to keep uncovering the forgotten, the cursed, and the unsolved corners of history, make sure you subscribe. Because every time we open another case, another door creaks open somewhere in the past, and you won't want to miss what steps out of the shadows next.